Kampai, Salute, Gambe, Skål, Prost. Hello, and welcome to the Drunken Storytellers podcast, where I tell folktales and folklore from around the globe. So sit back, grab yourself a drink, and enjoy the show. Hello, sorry about the delay. 1 second, things aren't working. Right, and I'm in the wrong part of my script. So, let's begin. Episode 4. So, hello and everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Drunken Story Surprise? The Drunken Story Surprise? It is always a surprise when I do these things. I mean the Drunken Storyteller. I'm surprised I've made it this far. As I say, it's a surprise. Woo, surprise. And I've made more than one of these. You say, but hey, it's fun, and I get to dig around in the backwaters of folklore, myths, and legends, and all sorts of weird stuff. I've noticed I'm not very clear on the video. Ooh. Is that going to make it any better? I don't know. Anyway. So, for this episode, I tried to find a drink that would go with the topic, which is dragons. But, well, apparently I can't find cheap dragon alcohol. There's some nice whiskies out there, which I have tried before, but they're like £40 a bottle, and I wasn't going to buy a £40 bottle of scotch for this. So, instead, I've got a Cobra beer. Now, I know cobras aren't dragons and they're snakes and things, but there's actually another reason why I've got Cobra. It's because my bonus bit, the podcast-only story and discussion, is going to be based on something called the Vritra from Indian and Vedic mythology. But we will talk about that later. So, you may have noticed as well on the podcast, YouTube, Twitch thing that I've got a new logo, banner, icon thing. And if you're watching it on YouTube or Twitch, you notice it's all kind of down here as well. This was done by the awesomely talented Copper Dragon over on Instagram. So go give her a like and do some cool things on it. So we've got I hope I'm pointing the right way. Am I pointing the right way? No. So that one over there, that's Krampus. And that's P-U-S-S, Krampus. It's a cat. We've got, on the other side, Humphrey Bogart, who's a boggart, surprisingly enough. And on the actual logo, you'll notice there's Gary the Kobold dangling around somewhere. One day I might even write a story that relates all three of them together and why they're kind of harassing me out of a book cover. But we'll see. So, anyway, yes, this episode is all about them, their dragonese, dragos, wyverns, whims, and drakes. So, loads of them. Loads of different things. It's them, their things that fly in the sky and tend to breathe fire and eat people. Mostly in the European myths, they breathe fire and have the fire thing. Everywhere else, they seem to be related to water. But anyway, they do still kind of eat people and do bad shit in other countries, but there are also some good ones. So, before we get into the stories, as I've already started doing, I'm having a waffle, because I like using my voice and I've not used it for a while. So let's give you an idea about dragonese, dragons and things, dragos. As this is a podcast, and I don't really want it to go on for very long, I'm not going to cover too much. So there's so much lore and history and knowledge and all sorts of stuff about dragons out there from all kinds of places all over the world. So you've got your classic Western dragon, which we were talking about a minute ago. They hoard gold, they breathe fire, most of them, or have something to do with fire. They eat people a lot. They eat churches, the buildings, they eat cattle, they just are a general pain in the ass, and they just kind of go around and do nasty shit. So that's the classic Western dragons. They breathe fire. Where are we? There's loads of them, weirdly, in England, over the British Isles. Almost every county in England has a story based on a dragon. You've obviously got the Welsh dragon as well. St George and the Dragon is probably the most famous one. But that actually comes from Turkey. So if you kind of follow the history behind it all, it actually comes from Turkey. So yeah, our most famous dragon story isn't English. Anyway, you've also then got kind of things like the Fafnir from the Jorms Viking saga, so kind of your Viking-esque stories and stuff. Then you've also you can travel over to Asia and you've got Oriental folklore and mythology, where the creatures are of great wisdom and age. For example, the Japanese Ryu is associated with being a water deity rather than anything to do with fire. And it is formed up of actually many different animals rather than being a single creature itself. It takes aspects from other animals. So, for example, you've got eagle claws, tiger feet, eyes of a hare, scales of a koi, body of a snake, ears of a water buffalo, and horns of a stag, to name but a few. So, we see dragons taking on different forms to fit kind of the culture that they come from. So, now you've got your Asian dragon being more watery and kind of more spiritual than the fighty nature of the Western dragons. Now, I'm about to butcher a name here, so let me give this a go. Quetzalcoatl is a Mesoamerican, so Incan, Aztec kind of area, period of time deity whose name means feathered serpent. So we've got things in America. We can move to Africa, where we have the Canaanite Lotan, who is a seven-headed, twisting and powerful serpent, and was slain by Baal, or a virgin warrior goddess called Anat, depending on which version of the story you read. Lotan is also apparently related in etymology to the Leviathan, which is a sea dragon from the Bible, who was killed by Yahweh in the kind of creation myth of Judaism. So that's a kind of cool thing. Then here's kind of something even cooler. There is a name that many of you may know. So there's also Tiamat, who's an ancient Babylonian primordial goddess of sea salt, a symbol of chaos and primordial creation. And obviously this is used in many kind of pop culture references. So you've got Final Fantasy games along with all its other mythical creatures. It's used in D&D as a multi-headed big ass dragon. That's both in the tabletop and in the cartoon. If you watch the cartoon, Tiamat is probably the big bad that the dungeon master has to try and get rid of, and the plucky little teenage kids have to go and fight. But yeah, so I might kind of actually look into like the Lotan and Tiamat stories maybe at some point, because they are kind of cool. Especially Tiamat, really kind of fun stories in the Babylonian myths and legends. So yeah, there's all sorts of dragons all over the world. And that's enough of me waffling. I've waffled for like eight minutes or so before I've even talked about my first story. I've given you a bit of a hint. Well, I didn't give you a bit of a hint, actually. I didn't tell you anything about it. I'm going to be telling one story from England, one story from Britain, a British folktale, and then my second story, which will only be over on the podcast, is, as I say, is an Indian story, or an Indian myth from the... enough of that, I'll tell you that on the podcast. If you want to know what that is, go listen to it. So, now, grab yourself a drink and enjoy the stories. Tale 1. The Dragon of Wantley. So, this first story that I'm going to tell is apparently the most famous dragon story in England. Apparently. Because whoever wrote this kind of knowledgey bit, which I found, hadn't heard of St George and the Dragon, which is obviously the most famous dragon story in England. And it's also, actually, it's not one that I'd heard until recently, where I listened to it on the Tales of the British Isles podcast. And I thoroughly recommend this podcast. The guy who runs it does a much better job of telling stories than I do. He has better discussions, he's less drunk, and his sidetracks that he takes are more interesting and entertaining than mine. I think he has a lot more close relationship to folklore and folk tales than I do, where I just go around and butcher them and kind of bugger them up, really, I suppose. So yeah, go check him out. Please do. He's brilliant. He's kind of like one of the inspirations as to why I started doing this, along with a few other things. But yeah, so for the Dragon of Wantley, I've taken the original ballad from, when was it, like the 17th century, 18th century, early 18th century, can't remember when, and turned it into a shittier, there is a pun intended here, piece of prose. I've also taken a few liberties with it as well, just for the fun of it, because who doesn't like to butcher things more? It's also apparently an opera that I have not seen or read anything about, and I will not regale you with any operatic singing, because you need your eardrums to listen to other things other than my drony voice. So, I will take a sip, and we shall begin the story. In the old village of Wantley, there was a blight on the land, and no, it wasn't the great town of Sheffield that is just up the road, but a great beast, one with a ferocious appetite. It lived upon a hill and raided from the skies. It was a huge winged beast with a great sting in its tail that was as long as a flail. Now, I'm guessing it's a dragon-sized flail here, and not a normal kind of flail that a knight would go around. Otherwise, that's a really big dragon with a really stubby little tail, and probably isn't that scary. So, rumours abound that it was a cub of the seven-headed dragon Lerna, slew by the mighty Heracles. Unsubstantiated rumours, mind, but rumours nonetheless. Being a dragon with a great appetite, this beast on the hill also had a mouth full of 44 of iron, and he shall be known as Lord Chompybints, Munchy Munchy Munch. So, yeah, I've named him Lord Munchy, but I can speak. I'm going to get rid of all this because this makes no sense, what I've just said there. So, with that great maw of iron teeth, the dragon would eat anything and everything that took his fancy. 1 week it would eat all the trees in a forest. The next, it would eat all the fish in a river. The next, all of the houses. It even ate a church once. It would eat all the cattle, all the sheep, occasionally a farmer. So he kind of just like picked and chose what he wanted to eat every now and then. And the villagers just kind of went, it's a dragon, what can we do? It's not eating us yet. But then it took 3 children and ate them up like apples. This bit puts a kind of a very strange image in my mind, is as a dragon trying to eat a child like an apple, and I'm not quite sure how it does that. Does it fold them up into an apple shape and then eat them, and what are the core and seeds and bits, and or does it just kind of turn it into like a sweet corn thing and munch on it? I don't know. It's what it says in the ballad. It eats them like an apple. So take it up with the guy who originally wrote this, not me. So, after finally getting fed up of having to rebuild houses, hire new farmers, steal fish from other rivers, and replace 3 children, the villagers decided to go and seek help. God knows why it took them so long. After all that, I'd have probably gone pretty quickly. I'm not known for liking to build houses very regularly. So, the villagers knew of a brave and glorious knight, Snigger, who lived up at Moor Hall. And they went to beseech his services. They begged and pleaded and sobbed and cried and prostrated themselves at his manor. I really should learn how to read. Oh, save us, Moor of Moor Hall, thou peerless knight of these woods. Do but slay the dragon, who won't leave us on a rag. We'll give thee all our goods. So, they will give some or all of their belongings to help get rid of a dragon. That is, stealing and eating all of their belongings. Yeah, okay. villagers. Can't argue with their logic, can you? See Klaus in my Warhammer Fantasy roleplay game. Thank you, Chig. Now, being a knight and living in the area, he was well aware of the dragon and how big and mighty it was. And despite some stories portraying him as a drunk, well, he is a bit, to be honest, he wasn't overtly stupid as a knight. Maybe. He thought that, to defeat this beast, he would need a new set of armour to protect himself. So off he set to the grand old city of Sheffield, that great steel working city over yonder hill. Now, anybody who's not from England, Sheffield is famous for making steel. It's getting nicer as a town, but it's still a bit grim. It's a bit grim up north. I shouldn't say that because I'm up north, and I do like the north. But yeah, Sheffield is it's an old industry town, and there's lots of steel works and shindigs up here. Shindigs? I don't know. Anyway. Now, yes, he wanted a new, shiny, strong set of armour to fight the dragon in so he could be protected. But he also had some designs in mind for it, shall we say. Now, he wanted spikes. All the spikes. Like all the spikes everywhere. The ballad states that spikes are to be what does it say? The ballad states that the spikes are to only be not within, but without. So, gives you a kind of interesting look as to kind of the thought processes either behind the guy who wrote the ballad or behind the thought processes of your blacksmiths. Why would they even consider putting spikes on the inside of a set of armour rather than on the outside? Well, ye olde people and all that. So, he got himself a set of armour covered in all the spikes, literally spikes everywhere, covered from head to toe in spikes. As he was walking back, he was thinking, wow, this is the best idea I've ever had. I am the coolest and most protected knight ever. The people shall be in awe of my might and my armour, and wow, how cool do I look? In truth, though, the people sniggered at him as he walked past, and animals ran away from him, as he looked more like a shiny, large, outlandish hedgehog, rather than anything else. So, as I say, he not that intelligent, really, is he? Now, have a little bit of a drink before we get into the entertainment. Now, there is little entertainment to be had in these parts. Just work in the fields, chasing the occasional escaped pig, and going to the remains of the church for Mass on a Sunday. Obviously, the church having already been eaten by the dragon. The best thing that had happened up till now was when Old Phil fell face down in some pig muck, turning him from Old Phil to Stinky Phil. So, when the night came back and the fight was on, everyone came out to watch. It was like that big fight between Conor McGregor and Manny Pacquiao. It was like that kind of level of excitement was going on. Who's going to win? You got the big fighty dragon who's the best at fighting ever and eats everything against this knight who's wearing a hedgehog set of armour. And the crowds and the people were mad excited. They sat on roofs, obviously those that remain, because the dragon's eaten a load of houses. They sat up in the remaining trees again, those that were still around that hadn't been eaten, to get a good view of what was around, and what was bound to be one of the most exciting, epic showdowns of biblical proportions that they'd ever seen. Now, considering they'd never seen anything of biblical proportions and epicness in their entire lives, literally someone could have shot a bow and arrow at a bird and they'd have been excited by it. So, I'm not sure they knew really what they were getting in for. However, on the morning of the fight, the knight was, well, shall we say a little bit worried? He'd never actually fought a dragon before, or done much fighting for quite some time. He was getting on in years, and he got his knighthood back when he was a kid because he went around and killed some stuff that was bugging his local lord. So, he wasn't feeling kind of great about it. To boost his courage, he took some liquid courage. Some of this, I'm guessing it's probably not Cobra beer because that's from India, but probably some of the local ale. There's some nice beers around in Yorkshire. I'll give them that. In fact, floating around here somewhere. Yes, there we go. I've got some Vocation, Life and Death Vocation. That's from Yorkshire, out in Hebden Bridge. Really nice place, Hebden Bridge. If you ever get the chance, do recommend you go there. It's also where Sylvia Plath's grave is, up a buggery of a hill to climb up. So, I've lost where I am now. This is a problem with me taking myself off from topic. So yes, he decided to take himself some liquid courage. 6 pints of ale and a quart of aquavitae. I'm going to guess aquavitae here is some kind of spirit. It changes depending on the story quite a lot as to what that really is. But I'm going to guess it's like some really strong spirit to get him really pissed. So, yeah. So, thoroughly happy now and confident with himself from having drunk all of this stuff, he marched out. In the ballad... Oh, I forgot about this bit. This is funny. So, this is really weird. So, he has his drinks, and he goes out marching, and there's a bit in the ballad that talks about the villagers as they get excited about kind of going out and watching it. It talks about penises, I think. The line goes, but these put on their trousers not to spoil their hose. So it specifically states in the ballad that the villagers go out and they put on their trousers not to spoil their hose, which I'm guessing means that they're going to put their trousers on to cover up their dicks. I don't quite know what to make of it. I didn't quite know how to fit it into the story, but I put myself a little note here about it, and it's just like the weirdest thing ever, because it doesn't fit in with any of the rest of it whatsoever. Just this random bit about covering up your hose. Anyway, so now the brave, slightly pissed Knight of Moor made his way to Wantley, whereupon he called out a challenge to the dragon in a loud and booming voice. He decried, "Oi, you big bastard! Come pick on someone your own size. I challenge you to a fight, you big bastard. Come have at thee, for I am a knight and... yeah, I've got me sword, and I got me things, and I'm going to punch you right in the nose." Looking on, the crowd cheered and whooped in excitement, thinking the drunkenness all a ploy. Oh, how wrong they were. Upon seeing the dragon take to the skies and let out a mighty roar, the knight, well, now he really thought he had made a terrible mistake. So, trembling and probably crapping himself and wetting himself for just a little bit, let's be honest, like if you saw a fucking dragon flying through the sky and you just told him that he was a bit of an arse and he was coming for you, I think you'd be a bit scared as well. So, yeah, I don't really feel... yeah, it's his own fault. So, yeah, the knight, so trembling and probably crapping and wetting himself, let's be honest, he took off and hid in the village well. Yes, the well where they got water from, and it kind of kept the village lively. It's one of the few things that the dragon had not eaten at this point. So yeah, he'd hidden in the well. The dragon arrived, and he could not find the man thing that had taunted him so. So he was a little naffed off, to be honest. So he took to eating a few more houses and a few more trees just to kind of prove a point. It's like, you don't challenge me, otherwise I eat your houses and I eat your trees and you're all a bit buggered. So, but the rocks and the woods, well, today they were not sitting well. And kind of they scratched his throat a little bit, they scratched his insides a little bit, and they kind of, well, made him feel not so good. So, as is wont, the dragon decided he just kind of went, well, I'm thirsty as well, and my throat is scratchy now from eating all those rocks and all those trees. I'm going to go have a drink. Closest bit of water to him was the well. He'd got bored of the river. He'd eaten all the fish there, and it just wasn't pretty clean, to be honest, that river anymore. So he went to the well. So the villagers put their hands over their mouths, sniggering, knowing that the brave knight had hid in the well. Thinking that this was his plan all along, they were waiting for him to jump out at any moment and attack the dragon. Well, let me tell you, that is not quite what happened. So yeah, the rocks and the trees they really weren't sitting right in the dragon's gut. And you could hear a slow rumbling coming from him, and gurgling, turning, a bubbling coming from the dragon. And he started to walk over to the well. It looked, as a dragon could, more and more green and pale. A slight sheen coming to its scales. It started to sweat a little bit. And rather than take a drink from the well, rather than stick its head down the well, it turned and appeared as if to sit upon the well. More noises could be heard coming from the dragon, rumblings and gurglings and all manner of foul smells. Now, I'm going to have a drink, because this bit gets a bit weird. If this entire fucking story wasn't weird, to be honest. Our brave knight had hid in this well. Was looking up, staring at the sky, waiting to hear the dragon disappear. What he actually saw, however, was the light from above slowly get blocked out by a giant dragon ass. Hearing the noises coming from it and smelling the foul air wafting from it, the knight very nearly did what the dragon was clearly about to do. In sheer panic and terror before a deluge, the knight, jabbed up with his sword into the arse gut. Yep, and that's actually what it's called in the ballad, the arse gut. The dragon was pierced and let forth a deluge of almighty sludge from 2 holes now in its ass. Ever one for dramatics, as dragons are, as he wailed about releasing his guts all over the night, the well, and the village, it cried, "Murder! Murder! Alack! Alack for grief! Had you but missed that place, you could have done me no mischief." And the dragon died a slow, painful, messy, and somewhat stinky death. The knight was heralded as a hero and mighty champion of cunning and skill and bravery. Little did the people know the truth of it, and little did he tell them. For all the booze and all the parties and all the gifts and presents and gold and women and things he was given, who was he to deny them their hero? So, there you go. That's my kind of take on the Dragon of Wantley. Now, as I said, I have taken liberties with this. I've added a few bits in, padded a few bits out, and kind of moved things around a little bit just to kind of take the piss a little bit, I suppose. But it's also adds a bit of life to it, I feel, in my own weird way. Some of the versions of the story actually have the knight actually being brave and having a proper fight with the dragon, rather than just running away and hiding and stuff. But I kind of like the idea of him just kind of lucking out and doing stuff, because it does talk about the knight getting drunk and having all that beer and aquavitae beforehand. So I kind of like the idea of him just kind of, it's liquid courage and it kind of fails him a little bit. So yeah, and just the bit about him being covered in shit, well, again, you can blame that wonderful person that I mentioned earlier, Tales from the British Isles. It's his fault. He used it in his version. I'm using it in my version, and I think it adds a little bit of a laugh to it. So, Anyway, that's it for this part of the episode. Please do like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, rate and leave comments on my podcast, as this is the best way to promote it, especially on Apple. If anybody who's listening to this on Apple or watching it, please do leave me a comment. I will read them and I will maybe give you a shout out. I don't know. You can find me over on Twitter at The Drunken Store 1. I'm on Facebook. There's one of those Facebook business pages, The Drunken Storyteller. You can email me at thedrunkenstorytelleruk@gmail.com. So send me over any suggestions or topics, stories you'd like me to cover and talk about, or tell me how much you hate me and how much I should stop butchering these stories. So yeah, you can do all that kind of stuff. But also, please do go check out my other podcast over at Darker Days Radio, where we talk about horror-themed RPGs, kind of based in the world of Darkness and Chronicles of Darkness. And I spend a lot of time on the Warhammer aspect of that, under the Dark Hammer side of the show. We've just started also our Enemy Within campaign again. So we had a bit of a break over Christmas over at Gehenna Gaming on Twitch. So you can find that there. The first 2 episodes are actually on YouTube now, and hoping the next couple will be out soon. But that's Gehenna Gaming YouTube. I am the GM in that, running it. What else have we got? Oh yes, in February, end of February, there is Virtual HorrorCon coming up, which is run by Gehenna Gaming. I don't have the full details yet as to what I'm going to be doing, but I will be running at least 3 games for this. So it's over Friday, Saturday, Sunday of one of the last weekends in February. I can't remember which one. Ooh, my video just went funny. Is it okay? I don't know. Guess so. But yeah, so I'm going to be running at least 3 games. I don't know which ones will be live streamed and which ones won't. But I'll be going to be running Vesson, and I'm going to be basing that actually in Scotland rather than Sweden, and a Scottish folk story from there. I'll be running a Chronicles of Darkness game based in Manchester. A God Machine Chronicle based in Manchester there, and I'll be running a Warhammer Fantasy game that I have yet to decide what it will be. So go over to www.virtualhorrorcon.com to find out more info on that. So yes, and that is the end of this part of the episode. Please do head over later tonight. Well, I'll say probably tomorrow actually. So head over to your podcast place to hear the story of the slaying of Vritra on the podcast. Enjoy the rest of your evening, or whatever time of day it is that you're watching and listening to this. Cheers. Now let me see if I can actually end this thing. Cheers.